Great. So once again, welcome to our weekly get together, and we will start with our usual prayer. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnmadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. So our topic for today continues purpose of human life. Now, I would like to recall three things we discussed. First is that it is the privilege of the human life that you can think about this. In no other species of life, the level of consciousness is not that high that you can think about this universe, how it came into existence, what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of my life, is available only to human life. So that is why we are privileged, and human life is one of the most important, I would say, part of existence. The second thing we talked about, we just mentioned, purpose of life, or we just follow whatever the existence asks us to follow. Do we really need to have a purpose? We talked about that briefly, and we will talk about this more today. Then the third one, we're talking about the free will. Do we have free will, or is it all set? It is all destined? Is there a balance between what we call destiny and karma, or is it all destiny, no karma? So we will talk about this also a little bit more today. But first thing we will start with is the first purpose which most people in this world, most means 95% plus, think that my purpose of this life is to enjoy the life, to live the life, to, earn the wealth, to have sexual pleasure, to satisfy my desires. If you don't do it purposely, you do it unconsciously. This is how the human life is. 95% plus people, if they don't even desire to do it, they behave in that fashion. That let us enjoy the life, forget about the rest. And so we will talk about engagement into the world. And this is also the philosophy we mentioned, Charvak. Philosophy of Charvak. This is also the philosophy of many Western philosophers. That we don't know what happened in the past, we don't know what will happen after our death. Those issues, we are here, right, and in this existence, let's enjoy the life. This enjoyment little bit, how we engage into this world. How we engage. The principal instrument of our engagement in this world is rag. Rag means you develop attachment to certain things or people or situations, and then those situations continue to drive your life. For example, somebody is attracted to wealth. Now it is a rag to the wealth. Now his life will be driven by that attachment to wealth. He will try to earn wealth in whatever way possible, whether he wants to set up a new industry, or he wants to set up a new business, or he wants to engage into financial market and invest into share stocks and shares and things like that. And he wants to multiply his money. So that becomes his life. It is attached because the rag towards money has developed into him. That has become the principal force which is driving his life. Who has developed rag with sexual desires? Now that sexual desire drive him. He wants to find means and objects to satisfy that desire in different ways, whether it is through clothing, through food, through women, through whatever other existences which exist here, or whether it's film or nightclub or We find these means and wage and means to satisfy that drives you, that desire drives you toward that, and you remain engaged into that. People who are driven by power, they want to acquire power. It's maybe government power, it may be institutional power, it may be some other power, but they are driven by power, and that becomes their rag. They are attached to that and acquire position, the so-called chair, from where they can influence others. So that is another engagement into the world which drives you. Then the fourth major engagement is the prestige. You want to have social status, social recognition for yourself, and that drives you towards, the engagement in the world. The principal forces that drive you in your life for engagement in the world. Now, this engagement into the world is, we can call it a dod. It's like a race we are running. Each one of us is running that race. Quietly, you will also find that you are running that race, and other people are driving to you into that race. Somebody, your wife will come and say, "Oh, I need a necklace of diamond." Now that is working as a driver. She's driving you. Now you have to work hard to earn enough money to provide her a necklace of diamond. Then your son comes and tells you, "Papa, I need the best school which you can find for me in India." Now that is, you are driven again. You have to work for that. Firstly, how to have enough money to find and to admit him. Secondly, how to get admission into that school. And you search all your contacts and power structure to fulfill that objective. So it is not only your desire. Subsequently, others also drive you. Your father, your mother, your wife, your children, your neighbors, and your contacts, they also drive you in different directions. And therefore, इसको कहते हैं जिंदगी की दौड़. मतलब अपने the life is driven in different directions by different people. They are putting pressure on you, and you remain engaged into that process. A stage comes when you finally realize that all this race has been useless. Despite all the race I did, all the great effort I put in my life, I am not feeling happy, I am not feeling satisfied, I am not feeling contented. What is this? That stage comes. So the engagement into the world ultimately leads you to something higher, a search for something higher than the world. Everybody who is engaged into the world, at some stage in his life, he will find it. That this engagement has not been very fruitful, has not been very satisfying. I should do something higher. And what is that higher? We'll talk about that. But first, let me explain this engagement a little bit more. Firstly, that Maya मुई न मन मुआ मरी मरी गया शरीर आशा तृष्णा न मुई यों कही गए कबीर. कि the Maya does not die, man does not die, Asha Trishna does not die, the body dies, but still you carry on with this race in the world. So this is one very profound conclusion by a great saint of Kabir. I would also like to tell you the story of Yayati. I told you that story before, but that was in a different context. And this Yayati was, great kings and also predecessor of Chandra, that is lunar dynasty. He was predecessor of Kuruvans, the Bharat. He was several, what you call, generations before Bharat. He was a great king in himself. He had one wife and one that Sarmista was his lover and Devyani was his married wife. He had 3 children from Sarmista and 2 from Devyani. So he was completing his life of approximately 80 to 100 years. And when the Yamraj or Yamdut came to take his life, he said to Yamdut that, listen, I have just started my life. I have not enjoyed my life fully. You see, these things are pending. This thing is pending. I need to complete this work. I need to complete that work. So why don't you give me 100 more years, and I would like to complete all this process, and then you can take me away. So the Yamdut said, okay, that is possible, but there's only one condition, that one of your sons has to give up his youth for that purpose, and he will turn old immediately once he agrees to that, and you will acquire that 100 years of extra life. So he asked his 7 sons. None of them agreed except the youngest one. His name was Puru. Puru gave his youth to him, 8 more years of life. Then after 200 years again, the same problem arose. The Ayati said, I have not done this, I have not done that, I have to complete this engagement, I have to complete that, I have to fulfill this desire, I have to fulfill that. Time he married some others and he had more children. He repeated the same thing to the Yamdut, and Yamdut said, okay, you ask one of your sons to sacrifice his youth and I'll give you 100 more years. And one of his sons sacrificed and he got 100 more years, and this continued for up to 1,000 years. So 9 of his sons sacrificed their youth and he acquired a total life of 1,000 years. After that life of 1,000 years, he realized that this is an interminable process. All his desires will never be satisfied. He has worked so hard. He was at the same position as he is after 1,000 years. So he gave a conclusion, which is a very famous verse in Mahabharata. It says that all the women of this world put together, all the wealth of this world put together, all the earth of this universe put together cannot satisfy the desire of one single person. That is what the nature of this engagement in the world is. So whether this Yayati story is truth or not, I don't want to go into that, but the facts of the story are true. The story is true, that is applicable in a truthful manner to the human life. Whether that happened, that he got 10 lives and he lived for 1,000 years, that I don't know whether that is true or not, but the message it conveys is absolutely true. Continuous engagement for years and years and generations, we still remain dissatisfied, we still have discontent, we still desire for more, and that engagement, is never terminable in that sense. It's interminable process. And that is what Yayati concluded. Engagement into the world you can do, there's no doubt. Not almost most people do that. But at some stage in your life, despite that engagement, despite all the pleasures and pains of the life, you will still feel that I'm not happy, I'm not content, I need something higher. And that desire is the innate desire of a human being. That desire for acquiring something higher is innate. This is the crux of human life. And in this life we understand that an insect desires to become an animal, or you can say a plant desires to become an insect desires to become an animal desires to become a human being, because this is a continuous process of growth. You analyze your own life. When you were a student, you always thought that I should become a good student, I should become, better than him. It must have been a driving force for each one of you. When you were a person earning in employment, you always must have thought that I should get this promotion, that promotion, I should become, higher than this guy, I should become the boss, I should become the CEO of the company. There's a desire to go higher and higher and higher. The same thing happens in your social gatherings. You always feel that I should become, acquire a higher status in the society. Person who is in the pursuit of power, he always feels that I should acquire higher positions of power. MLA wants to become minister, and minister wants to become chief minister, and chief minister wants to become MP, and then he wants to become in cabinet, and then he wants to become prime minister. So that innate desire in any field of life, a person who has knowledge, he wants to acquire more knowledge. He says, I don't know this, let me find out, what can I do, how can I find this out. So this is innate desire to rise high. High is arising because we have this material, this DNA in our own system, which pushes upwards. You ask a cricketer, he says, I want to set some new records, climb the Mount Everest. Somebody wants to go down to some of the deepest valleys or the ocean shore in the Pacific. So these are all the desires which ultimately give an indication to us that we all want to rise. And that desire to rise, which the question that we want more freedom and more room to maneuver our thing, that is that desire to rise up and up, so that I will have more freedom to myself. So this desire and freedom, this freedom and the desire to rise, they are correlated in that sense. So this desire comes from where? This is the question. Despite all the engagement in the world, the best thing you can do in the world you have done, still you are not satisfied and you want to do something higher. That desire comes from your innate nature, from your very existence. It comes from bhav. We talked about bhav and bhav. This bhav comes from bhav. Rise higher, to excel, to go up and up. It comes from bhav. It's like the example of a lamp or example of light which always goes upwards. Same way, our bhav always wants to go upward, and that comes from that light of life. The light of life which brought us into this existence also has this innate propensity that we must rise. So this is one fundamental to learn, that whatever engagement we do in this world, to whatever extent we engage ourselves in pursuit of this world, still we would like to have a desire to rise beyond that, to reach a stage where our contentment is complete. And that desire is coming from Sat Chit Anand, because we are Sat, we are Chit, and we are Anand. And that desire is also coming from Purnamada Purnamidam, because the Almighty, that Sat Chit Anand, is Purn. He is desireless, because anything which is Purn cannot have more desire. Anything which has desire cannot be complete. It's not possible. The two things cannot go together. So since we are part of that Purn, since we are part of that Almighty, that desire is an innate feature of human existence. So this is one thing which I wanted to mention in little detail today, that why do we look for a mission in life? We look for a mission in life because our engagement into this world leaves us incomplete. It leaves us in a state where still we want to have something more, because we are not complete. We are not Purn there. We are asking for it. So that is the fundamental reason why there should be a mission of life. We started with a question that why do we have to have a mission in life? Here we are answering that we have to have a mission in life because whatever engagement, the deepest engagement into this world will still leave you incomplete. Will leave you with a desire that you want something more. And that something more means you are incomplete. You are not poor. And that is the beginning that why there should be a mission of life. Now, what should be the mission of life? This is a very, very important question, and we should consider this with great length. Now, if you look at the Hindu philosophy, basically, they have given us 4 basic objectives of life. Arth, Kam, Moksha. These are the 4 words which have been used to describe the mission of life. Dharma means you have to do things in a way which is correct, in a way which is, not legal sense, but in the legal sense, in the moral sense, in the sense of the very existence is correct. That is called dharma. Now we will have a separate, lecture on dharma, because that is a very profound subject in itself. But for today, only say that dharma is basically a path of doing things in a right way. We can call it righteous path, or we can call it correct path, or we can call it path which is in consonance with your own self. It is in the comfort zone of yourself. So basically that is what dharma. So the first objective of life in that sense is to acquire dharma in your life, to conduct yourself into a right way. That is the first mission in life. Without that right way, all other missions are not complete. But as I told you, we will talk about dharma separately. The second is that you have to engage in the world. Engagement in the world, you will not realize the futility of that engagement. The futility of that engagement will be felt by you only through the deepest engagement into that process. So please don't hesitate to engage into the world, because that engagement will ultimately take you out of that world. Coming out of that world is possible only through deepest engagement. So engage yourself fully in this world, and then you will realize this is all futile, and then you will try to find a new path. So the earth, the second objective, to earn earth, and the third to satisfy your desires. That is the Kam, earth, Dharma, earth, Kam. These 3 are the basics. In a right way, then you earn wealth and you satisfy your desire. So this is the engagement in the world. You engage in the world, but engage in the righteous way, and then satisfy your desires. Earn enough wealth. So the earning of wealth is not anything wrong. Satisfying your desires is not wrong, but it has to be done in the correct way, according to the dharma. What is wrong is if you become adharmic. If you become adharmic, that is wrong. Wrong is not to earn wealth, not to satisfy your desire. The wrong is to do those things in a wrong way, in a adharmic way. So this is the first 3 part of this philosophy, which is very profound philosophy, that conduct yourself in a righteous way, wealth, engage yourself in the world, earn wealth, satisfy your desires, because after satisfying your desire, you will realize that you have not been able to satisfy them, as Yayati did after 1000 years of effort. He took away the youth of 9 of his sons, and even then he was not satisfied with the world. And he came with the conclusion that the whole world put together, all the women, all the wealth, all the land put together in this world will not be able to satisfy even one single person. What we have to experience. When I tell you this theoretically, you will not believe it. When you do it practically and when you come out of that experience, then you will start believing it. Yes, I did all that engagement and I am still nowhere. And that realization is very important to set the mission of life. And that is why the fourth objective of this mission, which Hindu Shastras say, is moksha or nirvana, or total freedom. The concept of free will comes there. Total freedom. Swachandata, complete freedom. That you are completely detached, unattached to anything. Now that is very important to understand, because that is supposed to be the mission of life, according to the Hindu thought, according to the scriptures, according also to the philosophy of Buddhism and Jainism, philosophy of many other religions as well, that you should acquire the total freedom from your engagements in the world. You should have total free will. How is that possible? So what does this moksha mean? What does this nirvana mean? This is a very important question which we should discuss in some detail. Moksha means liberation. What is not liberation? If you are driven by somebody else, you are not liberated. If your boss is controlling, if your wife is controlling, you are not free. If your son is pulling your string, you are not free. If your society is pulling your string, you are not free. If the power structure of the country is pulling your string, you are not free. The freedom comes when all these things become irrelevant to you. These things are not able to affect you. It does not mean that what you do is not because of the consequences, but in your inner self, you should have that feeling of complete freedom. I am not doing because of this pressure. I am doing because it is coming from my innate desire to do it. The difference is not the manifestation of action. The difference is the process inside your mind and inside your intellect, which gives you that freedom and which takes away that freedom. If you do the same act under pressure or under constraints, it is not moksha, it is not nirvana. But if you do the same act on your own free will, then it is nirvana, it is a moksha. It does not mean that you don't do anything. No, you do everything. I would like to give an example of Krishna's life, because his life is a real example of total liberation. This person engages into a deep war. This person engages into the deepest diplomacy. This person engages into deep love with gopis and with women. This person dances and this person becomes so serious, and then he gives you the sermon of Bhagavad Gita battlefield. All this is possible only when you are completely detached. Otherwise, it's not possible. So the first thing which happens in detachment is that you acquire total free will. You acquire freedom of your action. The freedom is real. It is not because you are saying it, it is because you are feeling it inside. I don't know, I'm not able to explain it fully yet, but this is a very ticklish point. The freedom has to be related to your mind and intellect. It is not a function of outside manifestation, it is a function inside your own self. When you feel detached, like
So basically, we were talking about moksha or nirvana. That is the ultimate mission of life as per the Hindu scriptures. And what is moksha and what is nirvana? That is very, very important to understand. It is a total freedom from any attachment in the world while remaining engaged into the world. You are engaged into the world, you are doing everything what is required to be done, but still you are completely disengaged. That is this the situation of moksha or nirvana. You don't have to leave this world and go to the forest. You don't have to go and sit on in the ashrams. You don't have to, uh, what you call, go to the Himalayas and do tapasya. All that is secondary part, and that's a different path. Here, the path is engagement without attachment. You are engaged into the world, but you are not attached to the world. You are not affected. Would be like an actor acting in a film or in a theater. The actor is fully engaged in the theater. He is performing the role of, for example, Arjuna in a theater. But at the same time, he knows fully well that he is not Arjuna. He is only doing that role for the time being. And once he is out of the stage, he is his normal self. Now, that play, acting in this world like doing Leela or like playing in a theater, is the state where you reach nirvana, where you reach moksha. You are engaged in the world while remaining completely detached. Part on which we will delve more in great detail in our next session. A very, very profound truth which has been revealed by Hindu scriptures. It has not been revealed by anybody else. It's only the Indian contribution to the world, that how to attain total freedom, total liberation, the so-called complete free will, is still remaining engaged into the world. And behaving as if you are acting in a theater or acting in a film, leaving aside any attachment to that part, because that is your job. You think that this is only my job, I'm doing it only for the job, and that's it. Similarly, when you engage in the world, you feel that I've been thrown into this world to perform this, I perform this and keep myself completely unattached. Now, this is not an easy process to understand. I'll have to take some examples to make it clearer, but that we will do in our next session.